Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, coronavirus. Italy's death toll overtakes China's. Italy is particularly important, seeing as that it is a developed country. It is also a European nation, and obviously we've left in name only, and we're still a part of the European Union. In essence, for the rest of the year, yes, we are halfway through a transition period, as far as I'm concerned. Almost. Things move quicker to begin with and then slow down. So essentially we're halfway through, and Johnson's already saying that we'll end in June if an agreement can't be agreed, in which case it's hard Brexit at the end of June. So we're halfway through as far as I'm concerned. But seeing as Italy is a developed country, they have been most affected, it seems, globally, seeing as their death toll outstrips China. However, of course, China is not a very transparent nation. The CCP does not allow people to talk about things that it doesn't like it talking about, unless it reaches a specific point, in which case they can't hide it anymore, at which point their spin doctors come in to try and blame other people, like trying to blame the coronavirus on American soldiers, as they've tried to do most recently. And, well, what the fuck, China? Come on. At least, if you want, try and say, hey, yeah, we knew about it, and therefore we're researching a cure for it, which Japan is doing very well at, and therefore we're releasing our information on it in order to enable a cure to become quicker. So we're the good guys by helping you to find a cure. At least try and spin that angle, because we all know it started in Wuhan, hence the Wu flu, the Wuhan coronaviruses. All media outlets have reported on, even though they're now trying to say that it's racist to suggest that it's from China. Yes, because the Chinese are now a race, apparently. Even though they're also trying to conflate Middle Easterners with Asians. So, with that in mind, is Italy actually the worst hit? Probably not, because in China they have the benefits of low regulation in order to build hospitals quickly. Yep, that's good, fair enough. But they also have the lack of care for human life by barricading people inside their homes and having such poor construction standards that buildings then collapse, killing everybody inside because they've been barricaded inside. And the barricading is similar to what we've seen in the plague, which also originated from China, on the rats travelling over from the Chinese ships. And more recently, of course, with the Spanish flu, which also originated in China. There seems to be a pattern here. At what point are we going to say, hey, China, your wet markets of selling your so-called food and dietary excitement isn't doing the rest of us any good, and isn't helping you out either. So maybe you should put some effort into improving that so that you can help your own people. And maybe if we can spread that information out there, they will close their wet markets and not propagate such dangerous environments for such deadly bacteria and viruses to grow. Unless you think that this is more biological warfare, in which case you'd be concerned about the bioavailability of such a virus, which will mutate so quickly and also weakens the immune system, similar to HIV, as it depletes your white blood cell count, the coronavirus, which suggests that not only is it supposed to affect you and make it difficult to live for a couple of weeks, or a week at least, which would be an effective biological warfare weapon, because you don't want to kill them, you just want to maim them. It's more effective that way. It takes longer to recover than it does for a funeral. But also you want to weaken their immune system so they're more affected by other things, and you want permanent damage so that they can never be as fighting fit as they used to be, and you want it to be as transmittable as possible. Hence, the coronavirus is more infectious than the H1N1 diseases of Spanish flu, SARS, swine flu. Although SARS was slightly different, given that the coronavirus is a second iteration of that, essentially. It seems to be an engineered version of that. Whether that's natural or man-made is where the conspiracy lies. But nonetheless, it is more infectious than the Spanish flu. But thankfully now we have more transparent records outside of China and a much better medical system in order to deal with it as quickly as possible. And as I say, Japan does seem to be leading the way in this. That going after the cause is much better than going after the symptoms. So you want to be focusing on how to stop the transmission, how to create a vaccine in order to prevent transmission, and then also a cure if you can. By just pumping money into the economy, you're not really helping. You're putting a band-aid onto a amputation, essentially. It's not going to help at all. So, again, well done to Japan for actually trying to find a solution to the root cause of the problem. But, getting back to the topic in hand, the coronavirus has killed more people in Italy than in any other country after deaths rose by 427 in one day. The number of deaths now stands at 3,405, which is more than in China, where the virus originated last year. There have been just over 3,000 reported deaths in China, but there have been questions over the reliability of this data. Obviously, given that they don't want to be transparent. Similar to trying to ask anybody who's left China about the Tiananmen Square massacre, and they won't be able to tell you anything about it, given that that's been wiped from the memory banks. It's the same here, that they want to rewrite history, and they want to even rewrite the present, that the first doctor who tried to call out the coronavirus pandemic was quarantined before dying of the virus himself. And that is the way they do it, that if you speak out, you'll either be killed or isolated, contained, quarantined, until you die of something quite quickly. What a coincidence. So back to Italy. A lockdown imposed on 12th of March in Italy has been extended beyond the original 25th of March end date. Nearly all Italians have been told to stay at home. Despite these measures, the number of new cases and deaths has continued to spiral. There have been 220,000 cases of the virus worldwide, with more than 9,000 deaths. And you'll expect this to grow larger. The idea is, at the moment, while a cure is being developed, to simply slow the spread so that there's a much more than a couple of percentage points of the workforce inhibited at any one time, and therefore the economy can continue to grow, however slowly. So if you can delay it over a couple of years, obviously that gives more time to develop a cure, so it isn't an issue anymore, and if it becomes seasonal, then it isn't such a bad thing, depending on the level of the mutations, compared to the human body's resistance. But if you can delay it as well, then that means that only a few percent will be affected in one time, so that will slow them down, and the death rate won't seem quite as severe because people will be dying slower from coronavirus. So that's the idea there. Hence the isolation, so that although it doesn't stop people getting it, it simply slows down the transmission of people getting it. So if you're young and healthy, then obviously get it sooner rather than later, so that you can develop that immune system. Once you have then beaten it and you're not going to transmit it anymore, then you can go back into public and you don't have any concern about spreading it or getting it. But it's just the older people, of course, that are a concern, hence the problem with school closures, that they don't want to be with the grandparents in case they then infect them without realizing it. So, China has confirmed it had no new domestic cases on Wednesday for the first time since the outbreak began, but it reported 34 new cases among people who had recently returned to the country. And we can expect a second wave, most definitely. People will take their precautions, then think it's all over, but it isn't, given its month-long incubation period, the longest being 27 days, I believe, even though the World Health Organization recommends either 7 or 14 days, depending on the circumstances. So it is still double the recommendation, depending on who the subjects are. The number of cases in China, more than 81,000, is still far higher than in Italy, which was 41,000. So about double. So Italy has closed basically everything, told people to stay home, tried to raise the morale with patriotism and finding people who go outside. The same with France. It said that 4,000 fines have been handed out to transgressors and 70,000 control checks made since Wednesday morning. The fine is 135 euros, which is $150 or 123 quid. So anybody who travels out without written permission to be outside is fined. And the spokesman, Interior Minister Christophe Castana, said, "Some people think they're some kind of modern-day hero when they break the rules, but they're imbeciles and a danger to themselves. Yes, elites know best. which is why we've got 20,000 troops based in London, as in army troops. Then you might think, oh, that's a good idea. They specialise in disaster relief. They're going to be a fantastic help. We pay for them so much. Why should they do overseas work when we need them here? So, well, yep, there are other trained professionals who are better equipped to such viral infections. Sure, the army are more versatile in terms of logistics and transport that they can help out with, but I become very concerned when a government decides to put so many troops in such an isolated area and wishes to have such a high concentration of army personnel within the civilian populace. It suggests that martial law is just a stone's throw away, because if you accept the army into your everyday life so easily, then you can understand how quickly it can change into something which is far more totalitarian, and therefore I'm very tentative to accept army personnel to exist among us in day-to-day life. Nothing against the army per se, I just do not trust government whatsoever. So, hey, stay safe as always. And if we had the Second Amendment, we wouldn't have to be so concerned about it. Given that in America, the Third Amendment, I believe it is, could be the fourth, is the right to not have the army occupy your home. That is one of their core tenets, and it is for times such as this that you don't want the army to occupy your home, and you would have a right against it, given that the Bill of Rights, the Constitution in America, and of course you would have the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, in order to defend that right. And you should have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, in order to talk about it. But we don't have any of those in England at all. So the police are here. You won't be able to talk about it, you won't be able to defend yourself, and you won't be able to stop them from entering your home. Almost as if the American forefathers were forward-thinking. So they say that London is the worst affected area in the UK and has now begun to slim down transport services. However, the Prime Minister's spokesman said there is zero prospect of any restriction being placed on travelling in or out of London. And it is predominantly a younger city, which is shown by the walking speed of people, as it happens. That there was a peculiar psychological study done on the walking speed of people in rural or urban areas. They found urban area people walk quicker, but this correlated most closely to simply the age of the people who were being monitored. So younger people tend to walk quicker, which is also backed up by another psychological study, as it happens, of people who had to fill out a psychological quiz and were reading words related to old age, and then they were timed how long it took them to walk back to the lifts, and they took longer than people in the controlled experiment who, and this was repeated measures, who were told words to do with being youthful, who walked quite a bit quicker. So then they invited both groups back and simply swapped over the words, and the response was still the same for their psychometric testing. So yes, younger people tend to walk quicker, and everybody seems to know it, and it seems to make you more energetic and enthused and willing to work harder as it happens. So the other developments are of much of a muchness. There are more economic stimulus packages, but until we actually get coronavirus under wraps, this isn't going to do anything, because people already don't trust government, and therefore government putting in money doesn't help. You actually want more faith in the system, not just money put in blindly. It's like insider buying or insider trading, essentially, which is if people inside their own company buy a lot of shares or stocks in their own company, then that gives you an idea that they actually know something that means it's going to do well. If they just buy a bit, then it's like they're trying to put faith into the market. So what you need is more faith into the outcome, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And just having the government plough money in while also saying, hey, we've got these lockdown procedures and it's going to be harder for you to work. It's mixed messages at best and misleading at worst. So I don't see this really helping much, if at all. It's going to be blown very quickly, seeing as they're talking about like 15% of the GDP. It's going to have negligible effect. So we really need to address the core issue, which of course is trade with China. No, it's the coronavirus and sorting that out. But hopefully this is a time for the community to come together and not be too concerned or so concerned about money and financial profit, but instead about spiritual fulfillment, as hippie as that sounds, and finding meaning in your life through doing what is important to you instead of just chasing the soul abyss of a bigger paycheck. So until next time, find your passion, do what is meaningful to you, and have a good one.